You're listening to Filling the Storehouse podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Stuart, and we want to walk with you on the journey to living the abundant life through faith, family, and freedom. Our goal is to refine our why while helping you find yours. Together, achieve our best and highest purpose. In the end, we'll drive each other to intentionally fill our storehouse. What's up, Storehouse Tribe? Hey, this is Stu, and hey, I just wanted to hit on one of the tenets of this podcast, financial freedom. David and I honestly think that the best way to get to financial freedom is through real estate investing. We've been investing in real estate for quite some time, and one of the coolest things about real estate is the relationships that we are able to create. We basically use partners on every single deal that we do, both in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for our turnkey rental company, and through some of our bigger deals. You know, we've done some stuff, some commercial properties here in Colorado where we live, and we're looking to do more. So if that's something that sounds of interest to you, we'd love to kind of tell you what we got going on, what we're doing. We're looking for more partners. We love building relationships and having, that trust with our partners and the ability to offer opportunities to invest alongside with us. If that's something of interest, hey, reach out to us. We'd love to jump on the phone. We'd love to jump on a Zoom call, tell you what we're up to. You can reach out to us through social media channels. You can hit us up on LinkedIn. You can hit us up on Facebook. Well, hit up me on Facebook. Don't hit up David. You can send us an email. You can go to our website, Storehouse 310 Turnkey, and go to the Contact Us page. Send us an email at podcast@Storehouse 310 Turnkey. Any of those options, reach out. Let's talk real estate, and we'd love to tell you what we're up to. Enjoy this episode. Most importantly, go fill your storehouse. See you. All right, what's up? Hey, this is Filling the Storehouse podcast. David, you're about to say something. It's probably not very smart, but
dude, I was just gonna say what up, dude. And your jealousy. I just want to remind you, jealousy is a stinky, stinky cologne, my friend. So you should put that away, lock it up for our guests, and don't embarrass yourself. That's all. That's really my only word of advice today is don't embarrass yourself with dumb questions.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, I'm honestly a little jealous of Branndon. I mean, he's got this pretty rad TV show called the High Pointers. He's been climbing mountains in every state and taking along like super cool guests. I think it's pretty rad, man. So Branndon, dude, I'm super stoked to have you. And before we have you tell your story, I just want to give a shout out to my high school buddy, Scott Carroll, who introduced me to you. I think you guys have connected quite a bit there in Texas, but Scott, what's up, buddy? Thanks for introducing us.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That is awesome. Hey, Scott, reach out to me anytime. We could talk about the charity of being Stu's friend offline. I think it'll be great. So Branndon, thanks for joining us, man. Super stoked to have you, dude.
Thanks for having me. I kind of like this back and forth between you guys. It reminds me of me and my brother in my old rugby days.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it same. You know, I've been watching your show, and you guys go back and forth and compete against each other. I love the episode of you competing, eating jalapenos. Jalapeno eating contest. That was pretty rad.
Yeah.
Man. So if you could just give us a little background about kind of where you came from and where you are now, and what got you started doing the show.
Yeah, well, as you said, so my brother and I, we host the High Pointers. It airs on PBS and Amazon Prime, and we're working on season 2. But how we got there, we've just been athletes our whole lives, and team sports. You know, we're born and raised in Texas, so played football. And once we left high school, we just wanted to keep it going. So played rugby throughout college and after college, and traveled around internationally and played rugby. And then from there, we moved to Utah, Park City, Utah. We wanted to make the U.S. skeleton team. And so if you're not familiar with skeleton, you go head first down an ice track going 80 miles an hour, pulling 5 Gs. And
yeah.
So we did that.
Crazy.
And just, like, to me, everybody's like, oh, you're an adrenaline junkie. And I was like, actually, it just seems normal to me. Like I just have to do it. And then from that, I just was like, man, what can I do after skeleton? And we started climbing mountains. We grew up in Texas, but we were like, how can we learn to climb mountains safely, because, we tend to find ourselves in these sketchy scenarios. So we went to mountaineering school and learned to climb, and then joined a mountaineering club, and just kind of grew our skill set in climbing mountains. And I got my degree in broadcast journalism at Texas State University. And so it was kind of like a 2-track thing where I was like learning the outdoor skills, kind of had the athletic background, and then started to learn what it was like to create, documentaries, and kind of got into the TV world and started producing, and then kind of put all those passions together and created this show.
Hey, and I'm curious, just to rewind, because you kind of brushed over, but I was looking at I was looking through your website, kind of reading up on you guys, watching the show, and yeah, one of the things that popped in my mind is, has this always been like the physical fitness, the challenge, and I wouldn't call it adrenaline junkie, but because I see you guys as athletes, right? Like you went from playing sports, and then you sought this the goal to try to make the Olympic team, and it's these athletic endeavors that really stuck out to me. And has this always been just, were you raised in the outdoors, and there's this emphasis on athletics? Was it, is it just how you guys are built? Because it's interesting that you're both, very similar minded from the perspective of, physicality and doing hard things. And I'm just kind of curious what kind of cultivated that? Yeah,
it's interesting. It really, people just assume it was kind of in our family. It really wasn't. So we just kind of, I think we stumbled upon it. The long answer, and I'll try to shorten it, is, like I kind of just touched on, is I felt like I needed to do it. So when I started playing rugby, you guys are military guys. Most of my rugby teammates were military guys, a lot of special forces guys, and had a lot of Marines. And so I kind of felt like I was potentially going to go that direction. Like, I remember clearly, I was like, I'm either going to go special forces route, or I'm going to start climbing mountains, but it basically has to be one or the other, because it was like, I had to do it. And so one day I was at this leadership seminar, and this lady came up to me, and she's like, I've been observing you, and I want to test you. And I just thought it was really bizarre. She's
great.
Like watching me, So I went in and got tested, and she was like, just basically started breaking me down. And she started telling me things about myself that I already knew, like, hey, do you ever do these challenging things? Or, do you ever just find yourself like needing to get outside and doing all this stuff? And so she basically just told me, you have a high level of cortisol just flowing through your body, and you have found a safe way to release it. Because a lot of people like you either end up in drugs or alcohol or in jail, and you found a safe outlet. And so I just always knew that I couldn't have a regular job. I had to be an entrepreneur. I had to be outside. And it was just my way of kind of releasing what I just felt like a tiger just pent up and needed to just do something. And so that's really why I ended up doing it. My brother's the same way. I mean, we're exactly the same way. And so we just kind of kept continuing this lifestyle of doing really hard things physically, mentally, spiritually. Like, we just wanted to dive in, and we always kind of had this mantra of like, we know how to suffer more than anybody, and so we just embrace it, and we love every bit of it. I mean, 100-mile runs, whatever, you name it, 1,000-mile bike rides, like we just love it all.
And that's super interesting, because one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, and I've been really starting to get into a lot, is just, the human performance, how people are pushing yourselves to the limit and doing hard things. And you've had some amazing guests on your shows. You've had astronauts, 100-milers, Navy SEALs, tons of really super cool people that are doing these amazing feats. And I'm just curious, when you've been going on these hikes with them and asking them and interviewing them, is there a commonality between all these people? Do all these people have the high cortisol levels like you're talking about, like you have? Or what is it for these individuals that makes them like overachievers, if you will?
Yeah, I would say, like, we're very intentional with who we have as a guest. So, knowing a little bit about your podcast, and that you guys are looking, to have these conversations about pushing hard and physically, mentally, and achieving high levels of success. Like, we're kind of looking for the same type of guests, but I think, there's a lot of people out there who've made a lot of money and who've had a lot of success. I think for us, we're always trying to figure out, how do you maintain like a good life balance? Because people who climb mountains or are CEOs and make a lot of money, like, they're usually skewed in one direction. So I'm always trying to figure out, how is it that we can have balance doing what we do? Because I'm very ambitious, but then if I'm just always pushing towards my goals, then I sacrifice my family life. So that's the kind of guests that we're looking for. And I kind of, sometimes I push them and they don't like it. Like with, the Navy SEALs, SEAL Team 6 guy, who was also a SEAL Team 6 instructor, and most SEALs end up getting married 3 or 4 times, but I was kind of asking him too, like, what does that look like for you? Because obviously your SEAL life, it's being drawn where you have this SEAL family, and then you have your actual family, and you're being pulled in these 2 directions. So like, how do you balance that? And so that's when we're talking to these people, like I like kind of getting in deep, because those are the struggles that I have, but then also, I mean, these are the people that have reached the pinnacle of success, whether they are SEALs or we have the CEO of Tabasco. I mean, doesn't get much bigger than that. And just these really highly successful people who have achieved so much success. But once you've achieved that success, like, how do you create this balance?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to ask you that question. How are you doing that? Because, one of the things that Stu and I talk about quite a bit, and Stu, you're reading that the book. What is it? Second Mountain? Is
The Second Mountain by David Brooks. Mountain. It's really good.
And all parallels aside with mountain climbing and what you do, but it really, it's getting after that. You're setting these goals, you're achieving these goals, and then what? And I'm just curious. When you talk about family, that's a balance that Stu and I are looking at, right? We are entrepreneurs, did 20 years in the military, reached for our pay grade at that point, reached pretty much the pinnacle of what you could achieve in the military. And so there's this high level of achievement and desire. And now even approaching retirement, we're like, oh, we're gonna have all this time, but we have very successfully found ways to fill all that time that we thought we're going to have. And there's this element that is so important to us, and that's honoring our faith and our family, and being dads and being good husbands, and building that into our vision, and trying to really, try to juggle all those things, but prioritize the things that are most important. And I'm just curious how you do that, right? Like, you guys are doing the show, the show in and of itself, I imagine, is a huge commitment, but the show is taking place to another commitment, a substantial commitment, which is climbing these mountains, and all that stuff, I imagine, takes you away. And I'm just curious, how do you achieve some of that balance? What have you found to be successful?
Man, it's been hard. I'll tell you that. So to kind of get messy, and just kind of open up with where my life has been recently. Like, man, we filmed season 1 and had a lot of success, had a ton of viewership, lots of people watching on PBS and Amazon, and you get all this like recognition. Man, you guys are awesome. And I'm used to people just asking me, because I've been to 60 countries, climbed and done just awesome stuff. Like, if I died right now, I could say, man, I've had an amazing life. But I remember, like, we filmed season 1 and we're just about to wrap season 2. And I come home and I'm like pumped, man. I had just climbed a mountain. We'd filmed and it was successful. We had another like amazing guest, and I'm sitting there and I'm telling this to my wife, and she's like just looking at me, and I'm like, something's wrong, And so we start talking, and she's like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, she's just like, I'm done. And I thought, holy crap, like, what's going on, right? Like this. So long story short, I mean, it became just this process where I had to just stop everything that I was doing. And I just said, I'm going to stop everything. I'm not going to film. I'm not going to go travel. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm just going to focus 100% on my marriage, because I realized, it was like I was putting my calling, which I really feel like what I do, it's my calling, ahead of my covenant. And it's like, man, if I truly believe that my marriage is my most important relationship besides my relationship with God, then I'm not showing it to my wife. And it doesn't matter how successful I am if I'm just making her feel like garbage, right? Because I'm doing these amazing things while she's managing the house. I was like, I need to stop. So like I went, to the guys at my church and I was like, look, you guys need to help me. Like my wife's done, And so I was talking to this pastor and he's like, you know what you need to do? You need to love your wife extravagantly. You need to go do all the things that she's asked you to do and that you just never did. And so that's what I did. I was just like, I'm going to treat my marriage like it's me climbing a mountain, right? Like if God built me to do really hard things right now, this is the hardest freaking thing I've ever done. And so just started pouring into her and just like, I need to do everything I can. I always thought like going to counseling was stupid, right? And I would say like, why do we need to go to counseling? It's like, I started going to individual counseling, started going to marriage counseling, started doing those kinds of things. And so, speaking about balance, it's like sometimes the balance, you need to go into a different silo. So it's like the balance right then was like just going and pouring into my marriage so that I can then go back and start working, on my calling, on my business, on my job. And so I think sometimes that's how it looks. And we have to be willing to do that, and it's like, what is the mountain for this moment? And for me, it was my marriage. And so then it kind of makes you get back into saying like, okay, the next time I'm not going to let this happen. Like I'm going to start looking for those things when my wife said, hey, this is not working. I'm not going to let it get to that point. I'm not going to let her feel like that. And so, in an amazing, awesome way, it's like now we're stronger because of it. Right. But it took a lot of difficulty to get us where we're at, but that's kind of how it looks. And I think, it goes in all directions because I'm constantly looking at like physically, how am I doing? Mentally, spiritually. So you're trying to look at these, three silos and it's like one of them is usually going to be off, right? But it should be, I think, it should be faith, family, friends, and then job should be down at, underneath those things. But often we put them at the top. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you sharing that. I think it's really important to continually hear that and surround ourselves with folks because our podcast is faith, family, and financial freedom, right? And I didn't even know that. Yeah, it was very intentional with the way we arrange that, and we always talk about our friends or the family that we choose, right? So the relationships are wrapped into that second priority, but our faith is the top priority. But I tell you, it's hard. It is hard to when you're trying to balance, and I love what you said because we always talk about there is no such thing as balance. It's 100% effort where you are and what you're doing. So you can't be thinking about your wife. You're trying to summit this high, dangerous, cold mountain, and your mind can't be 50%. You can't have 50% of your mind and your feet in this other place. And then when you're back home, when you're paying attention to your wife, you can't, be up on a mountain climbing somewhere in your mind because you're not present. So I really appreciate you getting real and being vulnerable, but also I just think what you just said is so many nuggets for our listeners to really help. Cause a lot of our listeners are these high performing individuals and the marriage oftentimes suffers. And then we get to the end of whatever our performance is, our career, and then you're alone and you're like, or you have, multiple marriages or whatever it is. And you're like, what was that for? Well, was it worth it? And I think you really, highlighted that in a beautiful way. So thank you for that. That was awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. I was like, man, I need to do the hard work now because, talking to so many of my friends who've been married a lot longer than me, because I was crushing it for a lot of years in the sense that I didn't want to get married. I got married way later in life because I was like, I'm perfectly happy being single because I love my life. So then when I decided to get married, I'm like, it's a big deal. So then when I find myself, and we went to this one counselor, which, oh my gosh, like horrible. We go to this one counselor and she tells my wife, like, yeah, you go do your thing. And Branndon, you go do your thing. Like, if that's what you guys want to do, I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, your advice is horrible. You suck. Like, no way. No.
What's the refund policy on this hour?
I'm like, we need a new counselor. And sure enough, we went and got a new counselor because I'm like, no, like if you truly believe in a covenant marriage, right? Like, man, till death do you part means something. So I'm like, if that means I need to sacrifice something, so be it, because I don't want to be an old man, and we get divorced 25, 30 years down the road because we never address this thing head on right now, So I'm like, no, I'm going to address this now. And it's not like I'm addressing it where I'm like, we're doing this now, but like, let's just have a conversation about this in a healthy way. And so, yeah, it was hard. And in fact, I've told all my friends, I'm like, this was absolutely the hardest thing I've ever done, more than any mountain, more than any athletic endeavor. This was absolutely the hardest thing. Because for most men, right, relationships, all that kind of stuff, it's like, I know what it's like to suffer in the mountains, but suffering at home, it's like, usually I prefer to avoid it. Right. And so It was changing my mindset of like, this is my challenge and I'm going to accept it and embrace it fully.
I think I would say probably most men are that same way. Like, would much rather just go run a race or climb a mountain or something like that. That type of hard versus going and digging into a relationship that's hard. So one of the things, one of the core tenets of this podcast is just really trying to find ways to live our best life, live an abundant life, find our highest and best use. And I feel that so many people, especially like kind of our age group of men, just kind of get into this like kind of routine, this funk of just, living, for, serving or helping, create a life for your family. And, but finding fulfillment and finding true happiness. We had a friend of ours, a classmate of ours, he's a Navy SEAL, and they started this company where they're forcing people to do these things that find fulfillment. One of them is getting outdoors. And for us, David and I, that's a big part of our life. We're here in Colorado, we go hiking, we go mountain biking, we go snowboarding. How have you found that that's been a part of your life to fill your cup, to get outside of this normal like routine, and find fulfillment and be happy and find joy?
Yeah, I would say 1,000%. Like, I have to be outside every day. It's kind of where if I'm stressed, if I'm happy, like no matter what, I live near a ton of trails. We have this 26-mile loop that's just this rugged trail that goes around a lake. And I have a dog, and we go either mountain biking, trail running. And I find if I don't do it every day, I just find myself getting, short, or just, whatever the case is. And yeah, I just find that over the years, I have connected most with God when I'm in the mountains, whether I was trying to do that or not. There've been so many times that I look back and I'm like, the reason that I climb mountains is because whenever I was in a bad place, like that's where God met me, even though I was trying to run from it. Like like I said, I've been to 60 countries and usually, so one of my big, like kind of lifetime goals is to climb the highest point in every country. It's never been done. And awesome. So anytime I'm in a country, I'm like, hey, let's go find this high point, in Iraq or Jordan or Lebanon, like, anywhere. And so there have been times, there was a time when I had just finished playing rugby in college. And so I went to the UK to go play rugby. And so I found myself in Scotland, and I went to the Isle of Skye, which are these little islands off of Scotland. And I was in a bad place. Didn't want to have anything to do with God. In fact, if you know anything about rugby, there's some crazy dudes. And so I was partying hard. And I, in rugby, you like to see who can win the party after the game, after you beat the crap out of each other. And so we had the craziest team in Texas, and I was the craziest guy on the craziest team. And and I embraced it. No one ever knew my name. We all went by nicknames. Mine was Pigpen, because I wrestled a girl in the mud.
Nice.
And, I'm not proud of it, but
just for posterity, who won?
I did.
Okay, good.
That's good.
Yeah, I do have a competitive streak. And my wife just yesterday we were playing basketball. She said, "You're gonna let me win, right?" I'm like, "No."
Nah.
Yeah, and there goes the marriage story. But
Yeah.
So we were at the Isle of Skye, and I was climbing this mountain. And at this point, I didn't have any really idea how to climb mountains, right? And so I'm up on this mountain. I get lost. It starts pouring rain. I don't have a tent. I have a little sleeping bag, and it just starts getting soaked, and it starts floating from all the rain just pouring. And I mean, I'm just like miserable, right? And overnight, like I'm kind of like, so I'd gone through a period of where I'm like, I don't want to have anything to do with God or religion or any of these kinds of things, right? I grew up in a Christian house, but didn't want to have anything to do with that because I had a pretty tough childhood. And so I'm kind of like crying out to God, like, God, if you exist, prove yourself to me, kind of one of those deals, you know? And I'm here in this middle of nowhere mountain on Isle of Skye. I'm like, prove yourself to me. So I wake up in the morning and I'm still angry, and I'm kind of like doing this, you know, like there's nobody out there in this mountain. So I can just like talk out loud, like, yeah, if you exist, like, let's see what you can do. So I come down from the mountain and I start hitchhiking because there's like no way to get around this island. So I'm hitchhiking on this little island. This guy picks me up, you know, and first thing he says to me, this is a true story. First thing he says to me is like, do you ever question if God exists? That was the first thing he said. I'm like,
wow, that's awesome.
That's
world,
crazy.
you know? And he just goes on and he just starts sharing his story. And he's like, I was in the military and I was flying this plane over the Pacific Ocean, and I crashed the plane into the ocean and broke my back. And he's like, I was in the hospital and I'm crying out to God, God, if you will heal me, then I will believe you. And he said, and God healed me. And guess what? I didn't believe him. I still didn't believe him.
Yeah.
You know? And it was crazy. It's crazy now, you know, to see like that was kind of my life. Like he shared this story with me. And after he finished, he's like, hey, Branndon, do you want to go to church with me? And I was like, no. You know, like I was just so hard and so prideful. I was like, no, you know, and it was years and years of like those kinds of stories in the mountains where God's like, hey man, you know, I'm here if you ever want me, and just kind of always kind of circling back. And so it was being in the mountains all the time, just connecting with people in all these different countries, you know. I have a lot of atheist friends who are just like, yeah, I don't believe in God. I'm like, yeah, man, I hear you. I used to be that kind of guy too, you know. So, yeah, you know, whenever you're ready, I got some stories for you.
Man, that's super cool.
That is cool.
I'm curious. Go ahead, buddy.
Go ahead, Stu.
So I'm curious, out of all the trips in the mountains you've climbed, like what's been the hardest mountain to climb, and what's been, I guess, the most fulfilling and coolest trip that you've been on, if you can identify one?
I mean, climbing Denali, it doesn't get much harder. You know, the highest in North America, highest in Alaska.
Yeah.
My brother and I, that was one of our first really big expeditions where we went and climbed Denali and then biked 4,000 miles. So we had our bikes shipped up to Denali, put our bikes together, put a bob trailer together, loaded all our camping equipment, and then biked from Denali to Baja, Mexico.
Wow.
And so it was like, well, we had a 4,000 mile bike ride, you know, so we had to climb the mountain because you can't just be unsuccessful on the mountain and then say, okay, you know, let's go finish the trip. So it's like we were super motivated to climb Denali. In Denali, I mean, so many friends that have climbed Everest, and they're like, man, Denali is way harder. And the reason is, one, it's much colder, and then two, you have to do everything. You don't have Sherpas. So, you know, we had 100 pounds of equipment, you know, 60 pounds in a backpack, 40 pounds in a sled.
Wow.
But while we were climbing Denali, we got stuck in a snowstorm at about 17,000 feet. And it was, you know, 40 below with 60-mile-an-hour winds. And we couldn't see anything. So we just dug a snow cave in the side of a mountain and dove in. and we're just in the snow cave for 24 hours, just hugging each other. Like, I don't know if we're going to make it through this, and so that was kind of a pretty good introduction into real mountaineering.
Yeah.
So that was probably well, that I started thinking that one, and Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya is the second highest mountain in Africa, and it's a technical mountain, so you have to rock climb it. So it's you kind of hike up to 15,000 feet, and then there's 2,000 feet of rock climbing, like a vertical rock face. And so we got 100 feet to the summit, and we were just going really light. So rock climbing shoes, no socks, thin jacket, but it got down to like 0 degrees. So no, there was no margin for error. And it started snowing, and I got so hypothermic. I was shaking, and I was like, I'm going to die probably in the next 10 minutes. It was that bad. So I just told my brother, like, we need to stop right now and start hugging each other. So we hugged each other on the side of this cliff. We're clipped into the rock and just hugging each other for 8 hours, waiting for the sun to come up, and that was a pretty horrible but awesome experience.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy, man. Yeah, and I encourage our listeners to go to your website, and you can see the the I don't know if it was your initial documentary where you guys did Denali, rode your bike down and went scuba diving with the sharks, and but yeah, I would encourage it. And that actually popped in my head is when you and your brother were hugging when you dug that snow cave and you guys were hugging to stay warm. I mean, and I think at the beginning of that documentary, you guys went to the sign, and one of the points that was made was it was like 100 and some odd number of folks that had passed away had died trying to summit it, and the number of brothers, I think, was one of the points that was made, is that it was just very a harrowing experience for you that there was a number of pairs of brothers that had died on the summit. And it was just crazy, just the mindset of not only acknowledging it, but then pushing through. And then you guys had an experience where it could have ended a lot differently, but through hugging it out, which I always tell Stu, I always encourage him. I'm like, dude, we should hug more because it's just important. Yeah. But you guys literally the hug was life giving.
The problem is like he's like tries to give this like huge bear hug, and then he starts getting like touchy feely with me, and it's not it's not enjoyable. So
but does it keep you warm?
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah,
exactly. So no, that was so go to the website and check that out, because crazy story, awesome story, but just I think some of those finer points, like I'm not a detail guy, but when it comes to stuff like that, like certain things stick out, right? Like the detail of the brothers, the you guys, snuggling to stay alive for 24 hours are very are pretty critical points.
Yeah.
Well, what else? So you got season 2 coming out. Do you know when that's supposed to come out?
Not so we still have an episode we need to film. So we picked a TV show that's really hard to film.
Yeah,
because
I would guess
it's based around the mountain weather, So we had to take a little bit of a break during the winter to wait till the weather to kind of calm down. We try to intermix because we have a lot of people that watch the show that are either don't do much in the outdoors, which we think is awesome. We want to get people outside as much as possible to have the same experiences that I've had, and in all ways, maybe not the death ones, but so we do like easy high points, kind of intermediate, and then we try to mix in a hard one or two. So like Louisiana, is 500 feet. Florida's 300 feet. So you got these easy ones. So we still need to film. We're going to go film New Mexico.
Okay.
It's over 13,000 feet.
I'd say that's not an easy one there.
Yeah. Wheeler Peak. And then the other part that makes it challenging. So just, you have the mountain, then you have the film permits to film, which is, really challenging to get these, because a lot of the mountains that we climb have never been filmed before, which is kind of a cool thing. But a lot of times we'll get these national forests that say, absolutely not. You're not allowed to film here. This is a wilderness area with endangered species. You're not allowed. So we just kind of have to, maintain that persistent, just keep asking and say, hey, can I talk to your supervisor maybe, and just kind of work your way up the chain until finally you're just like, look, we're going to educate people on how to go outside. But I mean, come on, people are,
what's the resistance? I'm just curious, why would they not want, what I would perceive to be educational and positive press?
these days they have this thing that they like to tell us. They're like, we don't want people to love the area to death. And I'm like, well, you want people outside, right?
They don't want
sometimes
growth.
I think they don't. I think they just want to have this area and just keep it protected. But I'm like, look, I mean, people are going to go outside, and they think, well, if people watch your show, more people are going to go on the trails. And we're like, yeah, that's kind of the point. But so we just have to constantly go back and forth and say, look, we're going to teach people to, leave no trace principles, like respecting the area, the wildlife, all that kind of stuff. Like, we're going to do that. And so I think it helps that we're like, hey, we air on PBS, which is kind of why we were, tactically like, hey, what if we aired on PBS? That gives us kind of some leverage to be able to say like, hey, but we're not, also sometimes I feel like we're not the typical PBS show, because we kind of do whatever we want.
Yeah. Well, that's such a limited mindset too, because I think just the exposure, because a lot of people are it's maybe not going to motivate them to get out and do like those really tough climbs, but it could bring awareness. It could bring funding. It could bring donations. It could bring, an awareness to, hey, if we don't recycle more or potentially get off fossil fuels, like all this stuff goes away, like whatever it is, right? I'm not trying to make any kind of political point. I'm just saying that there is an awareness that comes about these types of things too, that I think is it's so short-sighted to not recognize that. And I love that you guys are doing that. Cause for me, like I'm a big fly fisherman. Like I love fly fishing. And so, I go in the mountains, I fly fish, but I'm concerned about things like, like climate change, because last year they shut down a number of rivers here in Colorado that you fish through the summer, and the water levels were so low that the fish were under such stress you couldn't even fish it. And you're like, man, that's a problem, for a fly fisherman.
Yeah. Well, I think in a similar sense, from a business perspective, because I'm always, I did for a while, we did work kind of in the business world. My dad was a real estate developer. And so my brother and I, we tried going in that direction, wearing the suit. We're like, nope, can't do that. But we did learn some stuff in that period of our lives where, like it's so helpful in just trying to create this show, because it's really hard in the beginning. Like season 1 was really hard. But once you have a little bit of a track record, kind of like business, if you're trying to raise some money, you go ask for $1 million, like you're going to get shut down every time. But, you had a little bit of business success, you can point back to that and say, well, actually, we did this, and this in the previous year, so we know we can do this. And so we've been able to point, like we got a film permit from Virginia, the High Point of Virginia, with the Navy SEALs, our guest. And that was absolutely, so difficult, because there were so many different entities that we had to deal with: the national forest, a wilderness area. There was a national recreation area. There was a state park. Like there were all these entities that all have their little, kind of power trips kind of working. And, but once we maneuvered all that, got the film permit, now anytime we go to a national forest, they're like, oh, you guys actually did that? Oh, okay. So 1, the process. 2, if you've done that, then we're willing to work with you. We can see that you have a track record. And so that's been really helpful for season 2.
One of the things that you guys push a lot that I love on your show is just the idea of just getting out and going and doing things, like going and having fun, like going and be an adventurous, like the stuff, the Louisiana, you're going 500 foot, little hill, but you're going and like, you're checking out, museums and cool things, and NASA in Houston, and going to cool restaurants and experiencing new things. And I think that's super cool to push on families. And David and I have actually talked about on another podcast where David's way better than I am about just getting your family out. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and sometimes it's hard. Like sometimes it's hard to like get motivation to get the kids out the door and go do something, new, and drive 2 hours and go somewhere. But it really motivates me to get out and go do that stuff and experience and have like super cool life experiences. There's not really a question of that, but I just wanted to commend you on on the message that you're portraying to people as they're watching your show. So kudos to you guys, man. It's been really cool.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, part of that just comes from the way we approach adventure just in everyday life. Cause my wife and I joke, because when we were dating, so she's an athlete. She rode in college and they won the Big 12 championship. So like I was attracted to her because she was a rower, an athlete. And then she did, one of the other reasons we ended up connecting is she was working in the Middle East as an archaeologist. And I had been doing some work in the Middle East. I was climbing mountains, but I was doing some work over there. But when we got together, you know, I was like, yeah, you know, this was my way of trying to, you know, sound cool, I guess, when I was trying to win her over it when we were dating. I was like, yeah, I have these, you know, different levels of friends. You know, I have kind of my everyday, you know, adventure people. You know, I kind of have my intermediate adventure, you know, group, and then my hardcore. So depending on where you're at, like you know, that I'll try to figure out what kind of date we can go on, you know. so I still kind of use that approach where it's like when people, I invite them to, like, I don't know, go trail running or hiking or mountain biking. This happens a lot. We're like, oh man, I can't go with you. Like, you're too crazy and hardcore. I'm like, no. If I'm inviting you, then the adventure is going to match where you're at. So
match where you're at.
Yeah. You know, so it's like, I'm not trying to crush your spirits. Like, hurry up, come on, catch up. You know, so like we get so many people, like families, like, man, we watch your show and now we're, you know, our kids, you know, we're all going to go travel and go do a high point. So it's like, choose your own adventure, which is why we ended up like just really liking high pointing, because I've climbed with a lot of really elite climbers. And one of the things that always turned me off with those guys is like, they can be very, you know, they have this elitist attitude. It's like, oh, Everest is for tourists, you know, like that's so stupid. Like that's
right.
You know, like I only do the hardest and the most difficult. And I'm like, I like doing that too, but I also like taking kids or, you know, whoever it is, and get them to find whatever their little, you know, not their little, but whatever their challenge is, whatever that may be. And I think it's a great way to introduce kids, which is what we always are, like season 2, we're always trying to bring that in. And how can you include kids or include people new to the outdoors?
Yeah, it's funny. Well, 2 things. One, if you enjoy taking kids hiking, I'd just offer that you could take Stu up hiking. It's like taking a kid. So that's always good. But
Brian, like, I can't go anymore.
You know, it's funny. We do joke a lot, but even this so I just got back from San Diego, we drove from Colorado, San Diego. We do a lot of driving. We drive to a lot of our destinations, and we stopped in Utah and we went hiking. And I tell you, and you know, I think I talked to Stu after, and I'm like, man, getting the kids out of the car was like, and we do this stuff all the time. Like, this is a normal thing, but every single time, and this is what wears you down, but every single time my kids just, I don't want to get out. I have a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a now 11-year-old. And they just complain. And it's whine. I don't want to put your shoes on. And the whole, like, for 45 minutes, we get outside, because I'm like you, dude. I'm not like you. I'm not like you, but like from the perspective
you're not like
I have to be outside every single day. I have to, like, if I don't get outside, no matter the weather, like I go nuts. And my family's kind of that way too. They destroy the house. I'm like, we're going outside, but I couldn't get the kids back in the car. It was the same tears process to get them back in the car, because we were climbing these. It was a really cool state park, and, you know, the red rocks and the mountains, and there's all these mountain climbers. My kids are, you know, climbing up these you know, rock faces, which is in and of itself extremely nerve wracking. But I'll tell you, man, it's really interesting. And I want to commend you too, because there's very few shows that we let our kids watch. And this is going to be one that I'm going to start plugging them in. They get on the weekends, they get 23 minutes. Why that? I don't know. They each get 23 minutes a piece on the weekends in the morning to watch a show. And this is going to be one we roll in. Like, everything they watch is Texas, which is unfortunate for me. They watch Dude Perfect, because it's wholesome, and the dudes, like the interactions. So you guys bring that same element. So I was actually thinking about this morning. I'm like, I can't wait till this weekend to get them, you know, to watch some high pointers, because I think there's just that that awareness and that element and that motivation. And it's awesome. It's beautiful, dude. I love it. I love that level of entertainment because you gain something from it. It's not just this mind numbing thing. There's a challenge to it. And there's a purity to it. And then the relational aspect between you and your brother is something that I think I want to be using that for my 2 sons, because all they do is fight over oxygen and gravity. Like that's what they do. So I'm going to make them hug it out for 24 hours in snow. Well, next snowfall we get.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. I've thought about having Dude Perfect guys on the show. You know, we went to church together. So I know those guys, they're fun.
Cool.
And crazy.
It's good stuff, man. Well, I know we're coming close to our time here. We really appreciate you coming on, man. This was a fun conversation, and I'm super stoked to watch season 2 when it comes out. And maybe we can, I don't know, maybe we'll try to join up with you and go climb a mountain or something like that. That'd be super cool.
Yeah. I love, hey, I'll come back on once the show's airing. I hate to invite myself, but
No, we'd love to have you, man. It's I think there's so much, and again, just to encourage you guys, keep doing awesome stuff, keep motivating people. I think, especially as a man of faith, I don't think you're going to recognize, you and your brother aren't going to recognize the true impact you make until, you get to heaven. And there's so many lives that you're touching through the platform, and just being very intentional with the messaging and what you're doing. I think the influence is going to be extremely vast. It's going to be wide. And I'm just, you're not inviting yourself back. We'd love to have you back on, especially, as season 2 starts airing and kicks off. And I think our listeners are really going to enjoy, that conversation as well. And this conversation, but also getting plugged into the show, I think is going to be an awesome thing for a lot of folks. So I encourage you guys to keep it up and keep crushing it, because you won't recognize the full impact till you get to heaven, guaranteed.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for the encouragement. Because there's this constant conversation, because you never know, I always used to hear this with artists and other people, but now I'm like seeing it from my side, because I've always just been an athlete and a climber. But, when you start creating and putting content out there, you don't know how it's going to be received, and in this case, we just wanted to do what we love to do. And we wanted to do something that was going to inspire and motivate and encourage people. And it doesn't have to always be blatantly like, hey, it's some kind of message. It's just what just kind of comes out of us. But we try to be really intentional about it. So I appreciate the encouragement.
Yeah, man. So best place to go find you, thehighpointers.com. Is that correct?
Yeah. Sometimes people get confused. There's a High Pointers Club, and they'll go on the club and be like, hey, this is not you guys. That's just a nonprofit club. So yeah, it's thehighpointers.com. And we usually have a link to either Amazon Prime or PBS. So people can watch. So all of season 1 is up, and hopefully this, it'll probably be this summer. We're still trying to work out the schedule. It'll be this summer when season 2 comes out. We're going to have Oklahoma, Ohio, let's see what else, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and New Mexico. So we have some fun ones. I'll just throw it out there, man. When we did Ohio, you think that's boring. It was awesome. let me tell you this, we took the Goodyear blimp to the high point.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's super cool,
that's
man.
Awesome.
So I just treat the show like, what crazy thing can I do? And I just call them up and be like, hey man, you guys think I can take the Goodyear blimp to the high point? And I'm just thinking they're going to be like, absolutely not. And they're like, yeah, we'll talk about it and get back to you. And then my brother's like, I cannot even believe you would ask them that.
That's awesome.
And then hey, if you don't ask, the answer is always no, right?
That's right.
Oh, cool, man. We'll put the link in our show notes. And again, great to have you on. Really appreciate you coming on. It's great to talk to you. And yeah, man. Dave, you got anything else?
No, man, that was awesome. Thank you again for getting vulnerable, getting deep. I really appreciate that as well. So looking forward to getting you back on.
All right, thank you, Stu and Dave.
Yeah, guys and gals, go follow this show, go subscribe, go tell your friends about it, and most importantly, go fill your storehouse.
Make it a great day, friends. Get outside today.
Get outside.
Do something hard. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Filling the Storehouse. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe and share it with someone you love. And if you really felt inspired, leave a 5-star review so we could continue to grow and help other Christian entrepreneurs fill their storehouse. If you're interested in creating financial freedom through real estate investing, be sure to check out our website at storehouse310turnkey.com. We'd love to serve you through our platform of building the kingdom. Just click on the contact link and we'll reply to you as soon as we can. Again, thanks so much for listening. Now go fill your storehouse and make it a great day.